there's a couple of drawbacks. Number one, the acceleration. You start with an angular movement, and at the end, you go into linear movement. So the acceleration sort of stops. Okay? That's one problem. The second problem, at the end of the movement, you rely on the strength of your calf muscles to deliver the kick. Okay? Because what happens here is, once you push, if your calf muscles give in, not going to be any force transfer. Everything depends on the strength of this ankle and how fixated this ankle is. If it moves, there's no force. However, for a snap front kick, the line of the kick is in line with the lower leg. Okay? If anything, the front of the shin is required more than the back of the shin to be strong to maintain this pressure. Okay? So that's the first problem. If you're not used to this, and you begin to throw kicks against the target and try to push at the end where before you were just snapping them, this muscle is either going to get injured or it's not going to be strong enough to actually deliver that final push of power. Okay? That's one issue. Now, if you have a close target and you're going to be pushing somebody away, the best thing to do is actually, I'm talking about if the target is close enough and it's stabilized. You can control the distance completely. The best thing would be to come a little bit closer and actually hit with a heel. This way you're not relying on the stabilization of the ankle because this part of the leg is taken out of the equation. So the best thing would be to come a little bit closer, push with a heel, and come back. Small movement, but more power. Of course, now you just brought up a very high chamber. You have to have strength to do that, number one, and number two, you're telegraphing it. But very often in close combat, that's not seen. Kicking with the ball of the foot gives you a little bit more distance, but again, stabilization of the angle could be the problem, number one. And number two, very often it starts as an angular motion and transfer into the forward motion for a lot of people. Okay? Now, the main problem here is with teaching this, a martial arts instructor will demonstrate a snap front kick, which is primarily movement of the knee. Of course, the acceleration is done by the hip, upward acceleration, and then the knee. And then the martial arts instructor will demonstrate a push front kick. Now, once the student begins to hit the target, the student will quickly realize that unless he's kicking low, the snap front kick no longer really works, especially in combat. And now what happens is somehow he has to push. If he's not ready for it, there will be an injury or there will be some kind of misunderstanding of what's going on. Okay? And very often people do that. People demonstrate snap front kick, push front kick, and then in real life what happens is they throw the acceleration here and push at the last moment. That's usually what happens. Okay, now looking at this target, if you do not see what's going on, I'll do it from another angle one more time. This is a kick that's originally demonstrated very often as a snap front kick. It could be thrusted, but usually it's a snap. A push front kick or a jab front kick is demonstrated as well. But then in reality, to minimize the pressure on the hip flexor in actual combat and at the same time to gain the benefit of the push, it begins as a snap front kick, and instead of continuing up, it ends going forward. Okay, so that pretty much is the issue. From this, sometimes when I teach things like that, instructors draw a conclusion that it's best to teach the kick the way I just demonstrated, a hybrid front kick. Well, if you do that, you'll miss some important points. Number one, most people who teach a snap front kick at some point are going to teach snap roundhouse. Okay, if you're going to teach a snap roundhouse, you have to teach a snap front kick first. And snap front kick should be a true snap front kick, which actually ends in a full movement of the knee without any help from the hip. Okay, and that's going to transfer into a roundhouse, a snap roundhouse. So that has to be taught. A push front kick, it's also good to teach because it develops the balance, also develops the strength of the hip flexors, develops flexibility in the back of the leg, and when you hit a target, it develops the calf. Okay, so both of those kicks are important to teach.